expecting this, but I'm happy to accept it as a marker of what I've been doing for the last 50 years in the music business in London, and all the many people I've met. I mean, today when he turned up, I had to think hard, but then I came out with her name just to prove that Alzheimer's is not yet set in. And it's been over 40 years since we've seen each other. But a joy to meet you again, Ronnie, and you to present me with this. I mean, the culprit is Mr. Liverpool, because he has been a very close friend of Adrian Clinch, and we met that way. And my father-in-law, who lived in Silent Hill, San Vivian, 3B bar opposite the Fan Yard, was a man who first brought me to this magical place to see the breadfruit tree that Captain Bligh brought to St. Vincent. So I'm very happy to be here in these surroundings and to receive this honorable plaque. I'm sure my wife is going to find a place on the wall for this, and I won't be allowed to touch it anymore. It will become family property. So thank you very much. Yeah, my first trip to St. Vincent, I told my father-in-law that I was involved in the music business. And he said, oh yeah, I want to introduce you to a heavy musician. And he had this man who lived behind his house in another little house. And that man was Adrian Clinch. And I had many, many conversations about music with him. But at that time, I had been staying in a place called Sandy Bay. And my young son was a few months old, not even yet a year old. And I was by the beach, and there were two men conversation, and one of them said to the other, wonder what ever happened to Sheikh King? And I couldn't believe I was hearing this. So I butted into the gentleman's conversation. I said, gentlemen, I'm not eavesdropping, but the man you just mentioned, Sheikh King, I've just completed an album with him in London with my friend, the poet Vincent Johnson. Vincent had been a huge fan of Sheikh King and decided that we should do an album called Reggae into Jazz, because the Sheikh was, a mighty trumpet player. And in fact, my father-in-law's brother told me that he had taught him at school here at St. Vincent. So it was a deep honor to have made this album, and then to meet two gentlemen who, I didn't know them, they didn't know me, but overhear them talking about him. And I was able to bring news of him because they were wondering what had happened to him. And I was able to say, I've just made an album with that man. And that album, we had lots of TV on it. The BBC TV did a show called Arena, which featured Sheikh King. And when I heard that he was to be honored here, I thought, I've got to be there, because the Sheikh and I, we saw eye to eye musically, because he was a tremendous jazzer. And, I knew a bit about jazz because my father had an extensive jazz collection, and some of it Sheikh had played on, when he was in a group in the early days in the UK before he went to Germany and all that. Then he was back now after having been. I think I'm correct in saying that he was once attached to the
director.
the cultural director of St. Vincent. Yeah, thank you. And so, I felt close to him, being that my wife's family are all Vincentian, and me coming from Barbados, I thought, if they accept me, I'll be okay. So, yeah, I'm very honored to be here in St. Vincent, remembering the spirit of Sheikh and thinking about while we were composing the songs for that album, which was released on a CD, and I had sent some copies to my father-in-law in Sign Hill, but he said that they had been, what's the word he used? They had been sequestered in in transit. Some official people said, "What are you doing with these? We should have these CDs, not you." And took them away from me. He was most upset about it. And sadly, he passed before I could send him some more. But Vincent Preston Johnson, the poet, who was the person instrumental in inviting me to work with Sheikh. He has at home in his house lots of copies of the Sheikh King record that we made, and I think Mr. Gonzalez had a conversation with him recently about him coming to St. Vincent. I don't know what the decision has been, but I'm sure he will soon be here, because I told him, you've got to accept that. If Mr. Gonzalez says to you, come to St. Vincent, you got to go. He said to me, I'll be there before he put the phone down. Anyway, I'm very happy to be in St. Vincent. The nice fresh air, sea bath every morning, and just remembering things that Sheikh and I used to talk about the Caribbean and the wonders of being in the tropics, because he'd spent many years in Europe. I was taken to Europe at the age of 12 years old, and I'm finding it hard to speak to my dad now, because he was the person who brought me there and then returned to Barbados and leaving me there. But I'm very glad in the respect that the many friends I met. I mean, Vonnie, when she was in her 20s and I was in my 20s too, we were very young, and I was the producer at Ridge Farm Studios, where I produced groups like the Pop Group, the Slits, Matumbi, and Marie Pierre, solo singer, and I was at Ridge Farm for about 9 months without going back to London, and it's in a place called Horsham, and my wife would drive down from time to time just to check that I was still alive. So yeah, to the powers, I would say, Sheikh, rest in peace. Hadrix, rest in peace. We'll see you on the other side.
Well, yes, we had to do some changing up there. So now, we like to thank Bonnie that for us, and that she said she might have to move soon, so at least we got that part of the business out of the way. Now, I will ask Cleve to come to the podium. Now, Cleve and I, we rumbled in the National Youth Council for years, and then after that, we work on different things. As I said, if he has something he's doing and he think, boy, Andrew might fit in, he call me, and likewise. So again, thanks again, Cleve. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Andre. We are on Facebook and on YouTube. We're live. So there are certain things I will explain for the sake of the audience who are not familiar. I am a historian, but before being a historian, I've always been a musician. I'm a member of the band Touch. I have Willis Williams with me here. And we thank Nice Radio, lovely creators who has helped us with this thing. Black Sun, we also thank Touch who has helped us. These equipment we have here this morning. Touch, and we thank Jules Williams from VFL for his support. I need to underline that because we just need thank you for last. I don't believe in thank you for last because it's forget. I need to thank you first. Now, if you look behind you, you'll see a still image from a video. That's let me see who knows that. Who's that? Not you. You wouldn't know. Let me see if Koja knows that.
Kitch.
Yeah. Right, that's Lord Kitchener. Yes, and of course, Dennis, you know the year.
Depends on what song you were singing.
London is the place for me.
Yeah, that's 1940, June 1940. Yeah, that's right, you're in Rushmore. And for those of you who like numbers and so on, Shaquille was born, touch it to me. I was born in May.
Me too.
Okay, the stars are like this.
22nd week.
Okay, so 1948, and 1948 is what produces a Dennis Bovell in London. Because after 1948, thousands and thousands of West Indians, people from the Caribbean, went to England. And in this song, Kitchener sings London is a place for me. A year or so later, he sings Sweet Jamaica, I regret the day I left Jamaica. And people always think he's singing about Jamaica. And I had to explain to them Jamaica is a metaphor for the Caribbean because in England at the time, I sure they call it Jamaican dance.
Listen, in Africa, sometimes people ask me, where are you from? And I say Barbados, and they say, what part of Jamaica is that?
Yes.
Or some people say, we thought it was a fairy tale. Does it really exist? Barbados. I mean, because there are a lot of the people around the world that are ignorant of the history of the Caribbean and, as I say, ignorant of the diaspora and what we went through and still going through in this part of the world, And I personally have been instrumental in telling people that I'm from Barbados. In fact, I boasted of being the only Bajan that the most of the world knew before Riri came along.
That's a fact. So, the Dennis Bovell phenomenon begins with this. And I'm going to take it to the next thing. As I said, I'm a scholar. And I am also a music scholar. Some of you will know Mike Allen, Professor Mike Allen. He's a Barbadian who was a radio announcer, became an academic musician as well. And he's one of the leading experts on reggae music. And one of the things that Professor Allen, along with myself, always try to get people to understand is that when you talk about reggae music, it is not simply Jamaicans. And my first lesson about this was with Sata Masagana. You all know? Could you know the song?
Yeah.
You would sing it, you would hum it for the people.
There's a love.
Come on, man, because we're online, you know, we're online, so people are singing. Yeah.
Oh, don't need
Yeah, no, you're there, so let me go. 2 minutes.
There is a love.
One more time.
There is a love. Far, far away. Where there's no light, there's only day. If you look into the book of Psalms, you will see there is a love. Far, far away.
And that's the theme song for Shake Up and Wake Up. Pa, pa, pa. Right? Now, the trombone player on that, you know where he's from, Koja? No. That trombone player is from Trinidad and Tobago. We'll sing your head.
He was a friend of Lynn Tate, guitar player, who is also from.
There you go. There you go. Now that trombone player, his name is Jerome Francis. And he was the engineer in the studio for Touch in 1988 and 1999. He's the man who taught me professional recording. I've been doing professional recording since, but at a lower level. But when you go to Trinidad, you're going to make a studio, Jerome Francis. And he, when I asked him, you know, tell him what you want, he tell him, man, I play trombone, and you know, he didn't want to talk, so you know me already. Young fella harassed him, and he admitted. And I went and I researched and I found the record, and his name is on it. Right? So Dennis is saying there's a guitarist also.
Lynn Tate, Trinidadian guitarist who was at the forefront of what they call rock steady. When the music moved from ska to rock steady, Lynn Tate had came with this picking style, rolling the pick, you know, following the bass line, and it became a factor of rocksteady.
And that rolling the bass line is what we call a major motif in reggae. If you want to do a reggae song, I don't know, when you start with Dennis, you start with the bass or the guitar?
I think the bass, but then the guitar has to underline the bass, like in the same way as in an orchestra, you have cello, you have violin, you have contrabass. Now the cellos will usually play the same thing as the contrabass in a different register. I mean, in a different octave.
Yeah, octave, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So reggae took that on because that would be justifying 2 guitars instead of 1. You know, where one was doing the rhythm, chink, 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 and then the other one playing with the bass, the bass go boom, 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 you know, yeah, just an underlining of the bass line.
Yeah. What's the name again? Is he British? No, he's British. Trying to remember his name. Sorry. No, it's an artist. Was based in England as well and still popular in the Caribbean. UB40. UB40 is what I'm thinking about. That they really accent. Huh?
That group,
Yeah, they really accentuated, right? That style of guitar.
Well, no, they accentuated reggae that they liked that was now considered defunct, and they brought songs back to life, like Red Red Wine. Now that had been done in reggae before, and they brought it back, did another version of it, but what they hadn't realized.
Well, Red Red Wine is it Glenn Campbell?
No.
Or Neil Diamond?
Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond, yes. Thank you, Brian Alexander. Good morning. Brian Alexander is the leader of our band Touch. He couldn't make it, but he's listening. Go ahead.
Okay. Neil Diamond, you know, and in the early days, a lot of reggae songs were just copies of tunes from either England or America or even Africa, you know, and those tended to be the most popular because people already knew or had an inkling of the melody. But when we started to do a form of reggae in the UK called Lovers Rock,
Hold. You use the word form. You know, today everything they call a genre. So why do you call it a form? Why you don't call it a style? Why you don't call it a subgenre or genre?
well, it's all of those things, but it's a style of reggae that has now become, you know, come into its own as a genre. But the title Lovers Rock first featured on an instrumental song by the melodica player Augustus Pablo. He had an instrumental song, and the title of that song was Lovers Rock. So when the English of my generation began to study and record and release our own brand of reggae, looking for a name for it, the name Lovers Rock was, you know, was suggested because that's how the DJs in the dance would differentiate between a lover's style tune from Jamaica by Gregory Isaacs or Dennis Brown or any one of those John Holt lovers. They sang love songs in reggae, but it wasn't called Lovers Rock until we got on board and were looking for an identity for what we were doing. And mostly our lead singers had been female because reggae was heavily saturated with male performers. And you know, there were a lot of men in reggae, and it was going biblical too, and it was going Rasta. And I, for one, thought that we needed a kind of artist like Aretha Franklin, dare I say, or like Diana Ross, or Gladys Knight.
And for the sake of the audience around, what year are you talking about? Because that sounds like beautiful exuberance.
I'm talking about in the 70s, round about 1977.
Yes, mid-70s, yeah.
Yeah, 77. Because that was when reggae that my generation made in the UK became popular. And how it was done was there was a sound system by the name of Sir Cox. Now, this sound system was the most popular of all the sound systems. And it was always referred to as the sound system. Now, the guy who ran that sound system was a neighbor of mine. And then, we went to the same church as boys.
On Sunday, can't be on Sunday morning, so
No.
after the fete on Saturday.
That was the Seventh Day Adventist.
Oh, okay, so you get to go on fete Saturday night.
Yeah. So he had a motto that he perfected all over to say that he never played English reggae. So I only play strictly dub and pre-release from Jamaica. But I had a sound system that used to play anything that I made.
And for the sake of the audience, London is a big place. What are we talking about? Brixton?
Yeah, we're talking about
Central
South London, Brixton, Battersea, around that area. And so one day, it was suggested that I have a sound clash with Coxon. My sound was called Sufferer. And Coxon said to me, he said, I've been building my name as Sir Coxon for decades now. I'm not going to come and gamble my crown in a dance with you because he knew that I, was quite fit, up and coming youth that had music, and most of it I made myself, and I've made it popular, and people knew my songs through the sound system. So his suggestion to me was, let's meet in the recording studio, because I was also known as a sound engineer in the recording studio and recording, I would say 80% of reggae that was recorded by my generation in the UK. So his sound was famous for a song by a singer called Robert Parker, an American singer, and an R&B tune. And this tune was called Caught You in a Lie. And that would be the first song he would play on his sound system once it was set up correctly, testing the equipment. He would play that song because it was rare. He seemed to be one of two sound systems that had a copy of that record, Caught You in a Lie by Robert Parker. And so he thought the next step from having a sound system was to become a record producer. In the same way that in Jamaica, Duke Green, was a sound system man, and then he became a record company producer, owner, and Thompson Dog. The same with the Studio One label. So, emulating the temperature of Jamaica and the movement, sound systems in England, like Count Shelley, decided he was going to build a huge record store and call it Third World Music. And to this day, it just became a Costa coffee shop. And it was like a huge place, the biggest reggae record store in the UK. And he had become a producer, meaning that he was finding work for musicians in the UK and making his own style of reggae. So Lloydie Coxon wanted to do the same thing. He then got in touch with me to go into the studio with him to do a reggae version of Caught You in a Lie. So when that was finished, and he was playing it on his sound system, people believed it was made in Jamaica because of his motto of, I don't play English music. But there he was, humble pie, and he was playing a song that he was involved in the production of it. And I was the main musician, because I ended up playing all the instruments except for the drums on that song. And then, by the popularity of it, it became very popular all over the UK. And this was really, for my generation, the first recorded reggae in the UK that had risen above Jamaican produced reggae. And from there on, I knew that the formula would work for having girl reggae, where there were a lot of young ladies who sang but were timid and were usually relegated to the
vocals.
chorus line.
Yeah, what vocals?
Backing vocals.
Like the I-trees.
Correct. Although Marcia Griffiths in herself had a formidable career, because before she sang with Bob Marley and I3, her and her husband, Bob Andy had a hit in the UK, #1 in the charts, with a version of Young, Gifted and Black. I think the original of that song was by Nina Simone.
Yes.
Yes, the trend was to take an American song, do a reggae version, and you're more than likely to be successful.
Yeah, that was in what during that period.
Right, so I wanted to break that mold.
Yes.
And write songs that could have been written by anyone, Elton John, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. I wrote, for instance, a song called City Games, and I wrote it like a pop song. So it had lots of changes, not just your average two chords, rotating reggae tunes to it, soca tunes to it. It's called minimalism, but I
Yeah, that's it. And Willis is laughing. Willis is a arranger producer. Later on, he met out.
it was a bit minimal.
Yeah.
So
I want to take a bit more on the line of genre, because in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this term rap has become popular, and people are insisting that we invented rap as soca. And I told them the first place in my life I ever heard the word rap was in England, in London. We were visiting this family, and this young girl came out and told her I was a musician, and she asked me, "Do you play rap?" And I, what? And have never heard the word. So what is your recollection of this origin of raga, as whether you call it a style or subgenre and so on? What do you know about raga in England?
Well, I know that when I was a young boy, if I walked around with my shirt outside my pants, my grandmother would say to me, "Boy, you're too ragamuffin," right? So raga is coming from the word ragamuffin, which is a term that has been used for vagrants, for, in some instances, people who grow their hair in the Rastafari tradition, people who are frequently improperly dressed, So this music being what it was, because the beat shifted from just the third beat of the four, tap, 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 to tum, 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 tum. So it became more urgent, and it became more dance hall, because that was what the people in the dance hall wanted to hear. And in England, they like to name things and put everything in its box. So that became ragamuffin, but shortened to raga. It's not a genre, it's another style. Because the genre has to be reggae, but the style, well, if you want to divide reggae into genres.
So if you want to date raga in England, around what time would you say?
80s.
80s.
Yeah.
Which is what I recollect in England, these young girls coming there.
Yeah.
And I had never heard the word, and I had been all across the region. And I was already in the music industry. In fact, it was a tour we touched in England when that happened. We went to a barbecue. And that was Lewis. What Lewis was the name of Lewis? Lewis, who was here, the furniture man, who went back to England. Alvin Lewis, yeah. I like to give people the tribute. Alvin Lewis. Yeah, he's between back and so on between. Right? Good. Now, you made a point, and I don't think people understand the significance. I want to go back to it. You said you produce about 80% of the reggae music in England. At the time. Recorded, involved. And I know we are the old generation of engineers. If you're doing something wrong, we're going to tell you. We are going to tell you you're doing. We're not going to, am I correct? You're not going to press record.
No, that's true. The thing is that once everything is set and the musicians are comfortable and they've got the vibe.
Exactly. Because sometimes I made this point in relation to Jackie Bovell and Bob Marley, the Wailers. The Wailers backed Jackie Bovell and at least one or two Bolly recordings in Jamaica. And I made that point. I said if the Whalers are back in Jackie Opel must be communicating backward and forward. So they won't be influenced backward and forward. I might come into your studio, right? And I come with something different. And you like it, you never heard it.
True.
Okay?
And then in fact, I remember an interview with Bovell where he had admitted that he was a Jackie Opel fan.
With Mali?
Yeah. He said that he had hoped to become as popular as Jackie Opel, because he was a Jackie Opel fan. Jackie Opel was quite a dynamic performer. Unfortunately, he left us at the early age of 27 in the 60s. Who knows? In fact, I was able to find Jackie Opel's music with the group The Scatolites on release in Japan at the beginning of the CD era. There's a label called Alpha Enterprise, and they are marketing Jackie Opel and the Satellites. In fact, when I got a copy of that CD, I was working at the time with Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare, and I was showing it off. And Robbie Shakespeare said to me, "Where you get that from?" And I said, "Japan." Well, baby, no. So, okay, Robbie, for you. I gave it to him, and that was the first time he'd seen Jackie Opel on CD. When I went back to Japan, I begged another one from the company, and when I came back to London, my friend Cedric Lynch at the Barbados Tourism Authority was knocked out that I had a CD of Jackie Opel and he begged to borrow it. So I lent it to him, and then sometime later he said to me, "Ma, you can't copy it." And that was when I realized that the Japanese had come with a system where you could not copy one CD to another.
Yes.
And that was one of the first albums that had that prohibition on it. So I said to him, "You better give me it back, because you can't copy it. I know how."
Yeah, that is true. You're an engineer. All right. Well, we will take some questions from the audience, and I want you to come and interrogate a little bit about the chord structures, because that's something we debate all the time. And so on.
Pleasure meeting you, meeting a man who worked with Chicky, one of my idols, a man who was Jerome, and these all people, and I never really realized that we were working with greats. I know they were great musicians. I didn't know that. I didn't know the mark they had left before they became available to us, young musicians in that. It's still a pleasure. I'm not as young as I used to be, but I'm still learning, I'm still hearing things new. What is interesting is your description of the minimalist to God's structure thing. And I don't want to speak about it disparagingly, but sometimes as a musician you get a little frustrated that there's no variety, and there's no elaboration. They're not exploring the possibilities of that music allows. Of course, they are very nice and sweet to God, and even one God. Jam and so on sometimes, but as a trained musician who probably grew up in the classics and so on. You want something to show off with.
Yeah, you want something to sharpen your wits.
Yes. So it's really a pleasure. What instrument you really play?
Well, at the age of 10, I began playing guitar. Later on, when I moved to London, at school, the school had an orchestra. So when they chose which instrument a boy would play, by his size, and because I was one of the tall ones, they said, you contrabass. And they bring it and put it on my shoulder. And all the other boys were too short, it was over their head. But when you put this contrabass on me,
Yes.
and he said, that's your thing. So I said, all right, I will play it, because what it was that in the 50s and 60s, my family were known as the Walker Brothers Quartet, singing in the Adventist church, right? And I always liked to sing bass. Like when we were in church, I'd sing in the bass part. And my grandmother played the organ, and she had a terrible big voice. Bass part, like, and I guess because she was very dear to me, I kind of, appreciated the bass tones. So I played bass in the school orchestra until I was found out that my sight reading was not up to scratch. I could go home with the music, learn my part completely from top to bottom by heart. And then when we were playing in the orchestra, I played my part, right? But one day, I was in a music lesson, and outside of the window, some boys were playing rugby. Now, I used to play rugby too, so I was torn between playing the bass for the teacher and watching the rugby match. So I had one eye on each, and then the teacher said, stop. I wanted to play from line 34, bar 5. Yes, scratch my head up. Where's that? He said, I got you. So what do you mean you got me? He said, you are playing from memory. So how you know? You see you're watching rugby match outside while you're repeating your homework. You went home and learned the homework, and now you come back to perform it, with style, and you're looking away, and you're not watching the dots. He said, oh, you hear yourself? He said, you're not orchestral material. He said, I wish my memory was as good as yours, but you're not orchestral material because if the conductor stopped the orchestra, so you can play from here, you won't know where the hell you are. Although you know the piece. So I had to agree. So I said, well, I'm playing electric guitar in a rock band. Right? They had no conductor. Right? It's only I'm driver, and I drive in the chords. So I joined a group of 3 white boys, my age, 13 years old, that wanted a 4th member. And they wanted, preferably, a black person, right? So I went and showed off, because my guitar skills were a little bit higher than theirs. So I started to show them people how to play.
You've been playing guitar since you're 10?
Yeah. And now I'm 13, so I'm nearly a professional, And the fellas said, okay, we're going to play. And the group is called Roadworks Ahead. So when you're going and they're having roadworks in the road, you have some sign, Roadworks Ahead. Well, we helped ourselves to a couple of girls to enhance performance at school, in the school assembly. The headmaster was horrified. He said, good Lord, where did you get girls? And the said, yeah, we borrowed them, but it's take them back immediately, which ruined our stage props. But we still went on playing the tunes and the boys still enjoyed it, you know. Well, after a year or so, the guitar player, one of the other guitar players, this was a group without any keyboards, it was just guitars, like, you know, Beatles, Rolling Stones, the guitar-oriented bands. So we did that, and one of the guitarists decided he was going to leave school at 14. Now, in those days, you could leave school as you turned 14. You know, so he left and went to work for a music publisher. Now, that music publisher is called Robert Stigwood, and he was the manager and the label that controlled Lulu and the Bee Gees. When the Bee Gees first came out. So he went to work there. Then the bass player said, I'm going to work in the music business too. He went to work as a sound engineer for a recording studio called Olympic. And they were recording a lot of pop hits from the charts. So that left me, you know, without two members of this band. So I had to form a new band. This time, I'm forming a band with a keyboard player. And I had a white fella who could play classic. And in fact, another school friend said to me, your band needs a keyboard player, boy. I was playing full air with guitar. You know, the new thing is keyboard, you have to have a piano or organ or something. He said, Nick, this is a friend of mine, could play piano real good. I said, yeah, come. Then we go in the music room. There were two pianos in there. We could have a jam. Because I was fortunate enough that my younger sister was having piano lessons. So when she went to the teacher and came back home, I would ask her, what you learn? What you was playing? And she would play it. And then I would mimic her hard fashion.
Yes.
So that's how I learned my way around keyboards. Around drums now, I always had a passion for drums. And the fact that he was using both hands, both feet, and, you know, making a beat. And my older cousin was a drummer in a band in Barbados. The members of the band were from the Funky family, which young Rihanna is a member of that family. And that group in 1965, 66 was called the Chisels. They never left Barbados. They played only in hotels and things like that. They could play. And I'm not surprised that Riri has become a member of that family, musical family, that has made it international. Right, so because of my love for drums, and my older cousin played drums in that band, I used to just steal a little piece now and again with some ideas, you know, drums. And I thought I'd become quite a good drummer, enough to play drums, bass, guitar, and keyboards on my own songs. So I became a multi-instrumentalist on my king. No, I wasn't playing no Tchaikovsky and no Chopin and all of that. I was playing Bovell, right? So I make up my little bit of that thing, and you know, because I want to show off my knowledge of chords. So I'm not just playing two chords, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Yes.
I'm going all over, I'm going like if I Stevie Wonder, you know, chords. And he can't, I'm going like if I'm Ray Charles, chords, you know. And that was the thing that was my insight into writing this song, Silly Games. Because I wanted to start writing songs on the piano. Because if you know those instruments, there are certain tones that you could play on the piano that you can't get that on guitar. Guitar is quite limited, you know, and the octaves on the piano and the way you could press 5 or 10 notes at the same time and make a sweet chord, you know, and I've seen my grandmother and my grandfather playing gospel music. I know gospel music ain't no one chord thing. You have no chords. I mean, you know, so that was my, you know, reason behind writing music with many chords, so I don't get bored.
That's the idea. So you don't get bored. There's always something new. I like a song that every time I listen to it, over the years, I hear something else.
Yeah.
I hear something new.
It's like watching an old movie and saying, you see that part?
And again, it depends on the sound system. It has to do with the engineering. Some things are hidden on certain sound systems.
That's true.
I love to listen to the same thing on different sound systems. Different things are repeated.
Well, I have a new album coming out shortly. And one of the songs that I recorded out there, it's an old song that I liked in the 60s, an old pop song. And I always thought the song was called Hold Your Head Up. And it is called Hold Your Head Up. But there's one word that is blotted out by the music, and that is woman. The song is Hold Your Head Up, woman. But when you sing woman, you go, and you don't really hear that word. So I met the author. He said, you know what that song? Started out that song. He said, Hold Your Head Up, woman. I said, I never hear woman. When I went back and listened back to the tune, I said, all them years, I didn't know that word was hidden by the music. Yeah. So I decided to make a version of it. Word woman. Yeah.
You know, you tell me all about your grandmother and your cousin and so on. You're destined for this thing. You could hardly escape being a musician.
I agree, because the joke is, my father wanted to become a musician. My grandfather was a musician. So my father went to my grandfather to learn music. But while he was there, his eyes set on my mom. And I was the first production. So I said, it's music make me.
You know, some people say through this.
No, well, it had to be music, because if he didn't go to my mother's father's house to learn music, I don't know if the two of them would have ever met and me be the first production. Yeah. Yeah, man.
Well, I am not happy. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
There's a lot to say, a lot to learn. Maybe some other time we'll get to talk.
Please.
Yeah, there are two things I will listen to you. The first one is, when you said you peeked out the window to watch rugby and played by memory, he had the same experience. He went to music school and couldn't read anything. Well, refused to read, because his memory is impeccable. And most of the greats I know, they like both you and Willis. And like you, he played multiple instruments. And the hidden things is an experience he has, because there's a song that is perhaps the most famous song from us, Dutch. It's called Taken Away Somebody Woman. And he came up with a vocal part and told me to get someone to sing it, and I tricked him and recorded it. And he did it. And everybody says, that part, that went so nice, why you didn't bring it up? Who sang it? And when I tell them this way, they say, they never believe. So everything you said it. Okay, we have some more questions. Koja, first question from you.
Well, I was like,
Koja, remember your online, so we got it. Yeah.
Bovell and his Bovell.
Yeah, you're good.
Got a message from you all your. I didn't know much about the same day that when I went to the place that was Vincent. And where you from?
Africa.
Yes, yeah. So, what you say about interesting thing, so, I didn't really have any questions for that.
Well, Koja, he mixes calypso soca with reggae. Come give a little bit of Carnival Sunday and one, Koja. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Kwame, go for me, Koja.
Well, we just been thinking that just a while ago, we had some thinking all kind of things, Carnival Sunday.
Yeah, anyone you want. Just for him to understand the difference or your approach is different.
One thing you had to know very nice and clean. Because I read that in the league step degree, we'll be digging and we'll be digging. We're going to play the biggest team. Carnival Sunday afternoon. The wind is blowing more than a typhoon. Carnival Sunday afternoon. Yeah, so that was like a 1993 song. We rehearsed from what was made in 1988, 1993, and then another song like everything. Oh, I was telling the story. When I went to the tent to rehearse it, and I sang the word typhoon. Somebody, it's in the tent. It was kind of like in my vocabulary. And they want me to sing about typhoon. And they feel it was not a disaster. So I switched the script the lyrics and said, Carnival Sunday afternoon. You go be drinking strong man I run. Carnival Sunday. And I was back in 1993. So they are Soca Moroccan Zone. And that was like announcement. But what show this year, they are vertical, right? So saying that it's topical and thing, I think I people and think I stick to your roots, that's it. Go to hell, really an evil spell. Go to hell, really an evil spell. Once the sun shining, everything gel. All lights off, already here. Protected by the angel. Meet me in the tunnel. Stick to your roots, That is the truth. Put on the Marcus Garvey boots. Pick up the banjo, pick up the flute. Valentinian drop, salute. Blood, Lord, drop, produce the fruit. Garvey prophetic, no dispute. Dignitary beyond repute. One bitten, and that is why I am shy. It is forbidden to tell a lie. That is the creed, you have to comply. God are free, you can't deny. Even though he could die, on Papa you can't rely for something every day you like.
Alright, and that's Koja. And there's one credit I always give to Koja. You said your father went to music lesson and got a wife. I took Koja to the library and he showed me my wife. So my wife is a patron.
Okay.
Yeah. And I give Koja that all the time. When he carried me study showing books, he said, look, that girl over she watching you. Yeah, thank you, Koja.
I don't know about my experience. I never do offer in newspaper. It's a pretty barber by the application. So, when I talk to him, I need to please, good connection. Yeah, I go back and do all things afterwards. So, yeah, I will. Talk to me and show me and I need you all over here again. The boy was telling me to kill me.
Thank you, Koja. Well, do you have any questions? No? Andre, there's only... but before that, I have to thank Madam Bovell for giving you permission to get out the house. Yeah. And not only that, for teaching you. Babe, but the thief me, so she thief you back, so we equal. Exchanges or robbery.
I want to about the 2 car and the 3 car because when months start between them reggae guys very well. And even flames, the 3 card and the missing the 5 card is more or less, but they need a lot of notes, them and practicing the bass plenty scales. So even though it's cheap, it's jam card.
It's gone everywhere.
And some we call decoration inside. For instance, the other white lady called Carol, she had to come to stuff. She had to learn that problem. When you set up the whole structure, the bell like inside, you take up the flute and carry on inside and decorate. But she took up the 3 card. Had a lot to do with a lot of scales.
Yes.
Yeah, because the morning, and even look some of the reggae music, that's a pretty great data. But it's the coloration and then the city
Around the chords, yes.
which it has to be bring the scales in. So you know the relative and to harmonize,
Yeah.
So That's the point I want to make.
Yeah, come here, come link, you don't do Saka Massacre. I want to tell you Saka. But we're going to do Saka one more time, collectively, and then Angie go around. Let's go, Kwame.
We were happy.
Come, Coach, I just leave it.
Well, as we're about to wrap up and in speaking to Bovell, as he mentioned earlier, he has an album coming out. So while in the discussion now, he was telling me now one of the things he wants to do in the way going forward is in some tunes that have guitar, he wants to put in the pan because, as we know, pan is related to us in the Caribbean. So listening that, I thought, well, boy, that really sound great because we have our own great young panelists coming up because he was telling me about this Trinidad brother who was about 40 and he's bad.
Well, I have to interrupt there. I was telling you that the kid was from Trinidad. 3 or 4 days ago, I was at the beach, me and my wife having a sea bath. There was a lady there and her husband that we began to converse. The lady was a Vincentian of 2 nationalities. She was Vincentian with Portuguese mix. And the husband is a Trinidadian. We got talking about music. The woman said her young son, Dougie, was a great pan player. And he better. So I said, wait a second, Dougie? She said, yes, my son. So I said, madam, I was just working with your son in London because you see them two pan tune. It's her son play the pan. And that I would come here and meet her in St. Vincent. And she is Vincentian, right? And the father is Trinidadian. No, I always thought that he was a Trinidadian, but I find out that he's part Vincentian. And so when I went back, I text him to say, I just meet your mother on the beach. And he said, boy, he said, only you could bring them kind of magic there. Wow. Yeah. Whenever I'm in Vincent, there's magic.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. I was saying to him, you hear that? Dougie, this is Dougie's mother. And you know how I meet Dougie? Her niece is Dougie's friend, right? And so we went to a birthday party of two of her friends. Their mother is Grenadines, no? She's a Vincentian. All right. Thought she was a Grenadine. Their mother was Vincentian. She's passed now, right? But she has two twin daughters, twin daughters, that they play pan in Ladbroke Grove in Notting Hill Carnival. And Dougie plays pan in there. So at their 40th birthday party, they had a pan player playing the whole night, and it was Dougie. And I couldn't take my eyes off him. I said, that young man, you know, has something to offer. So I approached him and said,
well, I think we couldn't finish on a better note. You know, as I said, thanks again, and like this, it seemed like I didn't even know that you're a magic man. But now it seems like once you're involved in something, it is magical. This is why I said that regardless of how many people turn out today, we have to have this activity, and a seed will be planted, and the amount of information that came out here today, it seemed like we're going to build some kind of spacecraft or some magic class. So as Cleve said, you say thanks already. So as we said before, Touch, Nice Radio, WFM, everybody, as I say, who came, we have to get it from National Trust, the lady who usually organize lottery. It's just, as I say, thanks that it came off. Cleve again, I want to say thanks, Willis, because we were communicating while they were overseas, then the communication kind of slackened down, it kind of rocked the activity, but I see the Bovell is a magician, so it still came off, and I say thanks again. Cleve, anything else? That's it? Oh, the radio station?
If you get it, Monty.
Bovell, alright. So Bovell, all the best. Well, Vincent, I talked to my neighbor, so Kojo is representing the news. Well, you guys say playing quietly, you know what I mean? Yeah. Our cameraman, glad to.
Island Rebel Media.
Island Rebel Media. Thank you, my brother. Salute you and all the other achievements. And again, thanks. Well, we have some more there.
Yeah, and I represent
Bonnie was here. And the other arts and so on. Dr. Kwame with his Drum Foundation.
Jim Maloney Drum Academy.
And Jim Maloney Drum.
Drum Academy.
All the best. Yeah.